Welcome to the Explainer. Right off the bat, I want you to just take a second and really visualize something with me. Picture an ancient, incredibly atmospheric world. Think of a 4K heritage aesthetic, deep, moody lighting casting long shadows, the heavy, rich texture of ancient parchment in your hands, and all around you glowing, interconnected Sephirotic diagrams that are literally pulsing with this hidden ancient energy, right? That is the exact world we're stepping into today. We are going to take an incredibly deep dive into the Zohar's profound understanding of the human spiritual condition. We'll be focusing heavily on the cosmic ongoing battle between our two internal inclinations, and we're also going to unpack that massive, timeless mystery of why the righteous so often face intense adversity. It's going to be an amazing journey. Okay, let's dive into this roadmap through the mystical orchard. First, we'll look at the spiritual source code. Second, the old foolish king. Third, the poor wise child. Fourth, we'll break down the colors of the Sephirot. Fifth, we'll untangle the heavy question of why the righteous suffer. And finally, number 6, mastering your own dimensions. Section 1, the spiritual source code, decoding the base operating system. You know, it's wild to think about, but the ancient mystics essentially mapped out the human soul's source code literally centuries before computers even existed. They deeply understood that our consciousness runs on this complex, multi-layered operating system. So to really grasp this, let's use a modern tech analogy. The ancient texts, especially the Zohar, speak constantly of the Yetzer Hara and the Yetzer Tov. Now, people so often translate Yetzer Hara simply as the evil inclination, but honestly, that's a massive oversimplification. It's really not just about being bad. The Yetzer Hara is actually your baseline firewall. It is your bodily survival operating system. Think about it. It's the primal, fundamental code that tells a newborn baby to cry when it's hungry, to demand warmth, to survive at all absolute costs. It is entirely self-centered, but that's because its literal job is to keep your physical hardware running. On the flip side, the Yetzer Tov isn't just being a good person. It is your advanced, high-speed spiritual cloud connection. It is the high-level, altruistic software update that connects you out of yourself and into the broader infinite network of the Creator. Section 2. The Old Foolish King. The Default Human State. The Zohar uses a really striking, unforgettable metaphor to describe our spiritual baseline from day one. It says, "Better is a poor and a wise child than an old and foolish king who will no more be admonished." Now, this originally comes from Ecclesiastes, but the Zohar, specifically opening up in Parashat Vayeshev, takes this biblical verse and applies it directly to our internal, psychological, and spiritual architecture. The text isn't talking about ancient historical politics or kingdoms here. It's talking about exactly what is happening inside your mind and your body right this very second. Now, what's really interesting about this concept is why the Zohar specifically labels our bodily operating system, the Yetzer Hara, as an old, foolish monarch ruling over our physical vessel. Why those words? Well, it is old because it has been with you since the exact, literal moment of your birth. It has complete seniority. By the time you're even self-aware, it has deeply entrenched neural pathways. And it's foolish because it obsessively seeks only temporary, fleeting material gain. It completely lacks long-term vision. It doesn't care at all about your soul's eternal journey. It only cares about the next meal, the next physical comfort, the immediate dopamine hit. It's a king because it dictates your physical actions by default, right? It sits on the throne of your desires. But it's fundamentally foolish because its vision is just incredibly, incredibly limited to the material world. Section 3. The poor, wise child. The awakening. So this leads to the dramatic arrival of the Yetzer Tov, which is really the moment of profound spiritual awakening in a human being. Let's look at how this plays out chronologically on the timeline of your life. Step 1 is birth. This is where the Yetzer Hara, that base OS, arrives and essentially takes total, undisputed control. Step 2 happens at age 13, the traditional age of maturity. This marks the arrival of the Yetzer Tov. This is the moment the massive cloud update finally downloads. The mystical texts actually explain that the physical hardware of the human mind simply isn't ready to run this advanced spiritual software until this specific point in development. It creates a massive system update when what Kabbalists call the point in the heart finally awakens to concepts completely beyond the self. And then, step 3 is adulthood, which is defined by this continuous, everyday cosmic battle between these two opposing forces within you. The dynamic of this internal war is stark, and it's honestly a total underdog story. The old foolish king is heavily entrenched. It has been holding all the physical real estate since day one. So the poor wise child, the Yetzer Tov,
is at a massive disadvantage. It arrives late to the party. It is considered poor because it has absolutely no prior footing or influence in the physical body. It has no habits built up yet, but it is wise because it brings the actual spiritual will and the direct infinite light of the Creator. So you have this amazing scenario where this newly arrived wisdom has to fight an entrenched, stubborn, deeply habituated king for control of the physical vessel.
Section 4. Colors of the Sephirot. The hidden mechanics. To really understand how to actually win this internal battle, we need to dive into the exhaustive mechanics of the Sephirot. These are essentially the divine attributes or the channels of spiritual energy. And to do this, try to visualize striking contrasts of glowing colors. I absolutely love this multi-generational breakdown of the concept. Let's look at how the Zohar's color shifts, specifically the intense red for judgment and the pure white for mercy, can be understood at completely different levels depending on who you're talking to. For the kids, think of it literally like a video game. The Sephirah of Gevurah, represented by red, is the fiery boss level you have to conquer. It's intense, it's restrictive, it's tough. Chesed, represented by white, is the ultimate healing power-up that saves you. But for the adults looking at this through the lens of cosmic engineering, Gevurah is about balancing the systemic forces of restriction and boundaries, which, by the way, is exactly what the Yetzer Hara thrives on. Chesed, on the other hand, is about expanding the channels of endless altruistic giving, which is the pure domain of the Yetzer Tov. So the crucial point is this, and it's a huge paradigm shift. The ultimate goal of the human experience is absolutely not to completely destroy the red energy of Gevurah or the Yetzer Hara, not at all. Think about it. Without the fire and the selfish drive of the Yetzer Hara, you wouldn't ever build a house, you wouldn't start a business, you wouldn't have a family. You need that drive. The goal is to harness that intense red passion and channel it using the pure white light of the Yetzer Tov's wisdom. It's all about creating a perfect, balanced harmony where the wise child is the one directing the raw power of the king. Section 5. Why the righteous suffer. The ultimate philosophical conflict. This brings us to what is easily the ultimate philosophical conflict. If someone has actually done the work, if they've mastered their dimensions and aligned their inclinations, why do they so often face such intense hardship? The sources provide a genuinely breathtaking answer to this. As the Zohar states over in Parashat Pinchas, by the sins of the generation the righteous are caught. They are afflicted to atone for the world. We are exploring the incredibly deep concept here that righteous suffering is absolutely not a random punishment. Rather, it is a highly advanced, intentional mechanism of cosmic engineering. Let's move through this and see how the Zohar systematically demystifies this profound process of purification into 3 distinct steps. Step 1. Because all souls are inherently interconnected in a massive spiritual network, the most elevated souls, the completely righteous, end up bearing the weight and the spiritual blockages of their entire generation. They act almost like a cosmic filtration system. Step 2. They endure spiritual purification. What we simply perceive as evils or senseless suffering in the physical world is actually intense spiritual training and the burning off of collective negativity. And then step 3. This intense process culminates in an ultimate rescue and massive cosmic elevation by Hashem, both in this physical world and the eternal world to come. So the suffering is highly functional, it is intensely purposeful, and it is deeply sacrificial. Section 6. Mastering your own dimensions. So how do we take these ancient, towering truths and bring them directly down into our modern, everyday lives? Let's summarize the really actionable takeaways here. First, you must acknowledge your base OS. Don't be surprised or overly guilty when your Yetzer Hara acts selfishly. That is exactly what it was programmed to do from birth. It's just doing its job. Second, actively download the cloud update. You have to consciously, intentionally choose to engage the Yetzer Tov every single day. It doesn't just happen on its own. Third, harness that red energy for white purposes. Take your physical drives, your raw ambition, your fiery passion, and use them to accomplish massive acts of mercy and goodness. And fourth, reframe your struggles. When adversity inevitably hits, remember that it is a process of spiritual purification. You are literally leveling up. The goal isn't to eliminate our physical drives, but to put the wise child firmly, securely on the throne of our dimensions. Thank you for joining us for this complete journey through the Pardes. We hope these ancient truths help you and your family improve your own dimensions this week. If you enjoyed this full chapter deep dive, please like, subscribe, and share which part of the journey touched your soul in the comments. We'll see you in the next chapter.